living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network.
Welcome to the show. It is Toward Anarchy. I am your host, Michael Storm. Thank you so much for joining me. It's another beautiful Sunday in the middle of America. It's another beautiful day, period. We were, producer Ken and I, just before the show was starting, was discussing how wonderful it is to be alive in any time. In any time, things, things may have been a little bit different. Situations harder, rougher, not as much fun and playtime as we have now. Maybe better even at some periods if you think about it, depending on what your measure of better is. But I think that we both came to the conclusion that it doesn't matter what time you live in, that it's now, it's about you, it's about your approach to things. And I think that was a pretty great way to start off my show. I'm extra happy today. Just this morning, I had found The Big Bang Theory, the television show on HBO Max. And I've never been able to do the binge thing on that because it's never been anywhere where I had legal access to it. And and have to worry about my ISP tagging me for downloading something and watching something I haven't can own or anything like that. And wow, another conversation for another time. It's something we might have to address again because it falls under the category of things I'm talking about today. If you go to towardanarchy.com, and if you're not live with me, just click on the archive. Look for October 4th. It's 2020. My mom's birthday is in 8 days. That I'll have to remember to. She lives far away, not far away, but she lives far enough away that we don't get to visit very often. And we definitely haven't seen each other. She hasn't been to visit the family, and we haven't been anywhere. We haven't been anywhere in forever. She hasn't been to visit the family since before COVID. So, but she's fine. At any rate, birthday's coming up. It's October, and October 4th is the day that I'm talking about for the show today. Very special conversation planned. Principled Anarchist visits with me today. It's not as easy to find as you might think it is. Principled Anarchist. He's a rarity, it would seem. And we're going to discuss a number of topics. We'll talk about the election circus, the clown show that is. Maybe touch on some conspiracy kind of stuff. I'm always happy, but I think that a whole bunch of things have come together here over the last few weeks. Getting back to school for one thing, and helping educate my son online, and using those tools that he already enjoys as a child to continue his education, and just coming across some of the things. And let me give you an example. It's been a pleasure to really do this. Not just because I'm getting to spend time with my son, but because we're actually talking about serious things. You know, when they talk about citizens and stuff like that in reference to those great, wonderful framing documents of the nation, I'm the first to point out that it's not citizens, it's people. And if rights come from God, then they exist for all people. That includes the brown ones and the ones that don't live in America and aren't citizens, and all these things that go along with these. We talk about it here. But what's great is to see even in the controlled public school system, as it were, because we're using a typical online tool for teaching. We haven't gone with like Ron Paul's secular program, or I don't. Everybody has a different program here and there to teach, to use for homeschooling. But we've gone with the state one, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a great tool. And there's great information in it. It's just every once in a while you come across the stuff like that where they talk about citizen, but they get the other stuff right too, as much as they get that little bit wrong. They're sharp on the math tools and the teaching them to think around corners, and it's not as bad as everybody's talking about in this sort of. People have talked about in new math and the different manipulations of the state into the school curriculum and everything. And they're teaching them, from what I can see, it's fourth grade. And so it's a critical time because they start learning real math, not just the simple addition and subtraction. They start getting into more complicated notions of what math can be and what you can do with it and how it works for you. Even just simply in learning to multiply larger numbers and how to break those things up and the tools are great. I'm loving that, but there's other things going on as well, and I think these are the things that are important and need the emphasis, and that are so much more important than a lot of the things that you might end up. It's a lot of busy work, just like school is, even online. It's a lot of busy work, but there's this stuff that you can definitely focus on. There's the science and math principles. Those things should be solid, especially if you understand them. But there's also some philosophy and some general ideas about how to get along with the world. And there's something that we talk about on the show all the time, and it's because it's about me, and it's about communication, and it's about my own understanding of communication and how it works, and learning to communicate better, and to be able to put forth the ideas that are important to us, whatever they might be, and to get them across clearly, if not to somebody that is out there on the street, but to our own children, to pass on our values and the ideas. That the easier, the better that we communicate in the way that we learn to communicate and teach others to communicate, particularly our children, is extremely important about how successful they're going to be in life. There's a lot of it to do with attitude and about how you feel about authority and stuff like that. But even then, that ability to communicate will put you on that level that you can make the decision yourself if you want to, if you want to do the corporate thing where you have to wear a suit every day or some kind of uniform, as it were. My wife and I were just talking about this morning because she's a teacher, and it's very hard, and it's very hard right now with the lockdown and all the changes they're making. And I could show you the rope that they have to lead the young children around with, and the whole thing is just a mess. But this is indicative of the state, and so it shouldn't be any surprise. But the ability to communicate will choose for you whether you want to be in this, because the option. She says, sometimes I'd much rather work at a Walmart. And then, of course, I'm like, yeah, I've thought about it too. I love toys. It'd be great to work at Walmart and just work in the toy department and stock toys and be the first person, or maybe be the guy that gets to order the toys and be able to select what's, oh man, talk about, all of the toys in the world that I want at my fingertips. It wouldn't be so much as a job as it would be to support a way to support my habit. I thought about it would be fantastic, but then it's too far in the other direction for me. I need the flexibility, the creativity, and I suppose maybe you have that. You get further on in different places within any corporate structure. Of course you would. Otherwise, if they don't survive, they don't grow, they don't have people like me in them thinking outside the box. I don't know. But it just wouldn't work. It's too far in the other direction. Whereas the trying to work with the state and trying to work in that collectivist system is just a joke. It's completely busted no matter what you do. And it's just wishy-washy, constantly back and forth between ideas and money problems. And just all the things that go with the cluster that is the state. The other end of it is that strict you must follow, in Walmart, they have the morning exercises where they do all that sort of hand clapping and chanting, and it's all very, maybe a little too religious for the likes of me, I guess. Dogmatic, maybe, I don't know. It's too much. I get it. You need it for some people. Everybody needs and wants structure to some extent, and I think a lot of people probably need it much more. But it's more than I need. It's more than I'm willing to accept. So, I want somewhere in between. And that was the conversation between my wife and I this morning. But in relation to having great communication skills and being able to get that message out, this was really great to come across something like this inside the tools that I'm using, the public tools. These are tools that anyone can use to teach my child a basic understanding of the world, get him to read and write and think in complete thoughts, and to write in complete sentences, and to purposely use proper structure and query when I sound like a database, but these are all words and things that he understands because he likes the computers and stuff too. But to come across this, I'll read you verbatim this, and while it's out of context, it shouldn't be. You should be able to get it. Individuals can use the same principle of checks and balances, so we know what we're talking about. We're talking about government. When thinking about how to interact with others, we can try to keep the interests of others in mind. So try. Oh, look, try. Not you must. You have to. It's dogmatic. Okay, sorry. I'll quit interrupting. We can try to keep the interest of others in mind in our conversation and our actions. We can also listen to others as they voice different opinions from our own. Respecting and keeping the interests of others in mind as we interact is an important skill in today's world. It's just an important skill, period. You don't need that's exposition. And then just a little bit more of it. There's more in here, but it's specific to the lesson. So this is the important part. Be honest when communicating. Be positive and compliment others. Show respect with your body and voice. Honest and productive interactions in our everyday lives help us to grow and achieve positive results for ourselves and others. And it goes on to ask critical questions. How do you interact positively with any subject? Do you take on other people's points of view? Will you listen to them when it's on a subject that you don't know about, or even more importantly, that you do know about and that you are certain of, and you're setting your ways on? Are you listening, or is your mind closed off? Do you have that fixed mindset versus a growth mindset? And that to be teaching my son about that at his young age, and to have my sort of view of the way the world is, I just see him being set up for an easy existence. Just being able to get along with people, as hard as it already is in this world to find ways to communicate with each other. Harder every single day, made harder with recent events in the world. You can't even see somebody's face anymore. And it's going to, I guess it's going to continue based on what I see. I don't see it switching back anytime soon, because I've mentioned that sort of the signs are gone in some places, but the people are still wearing the masks. But I'll say one thing about this. I get the impression, I see the looks in the eyes. The looks in the eyes aren't disgust or fear of the person that's not wearing the mask. Sometimes it's just straight out admiration. Other times it's jealousy. The truth, and I've had enough conversations with people here and there as it's going on to know that there's not really anybody that wants to wear the masks, but they just do what everybody else does. And that's so sad to see that it's such a small percentage of people that actually think for themselves and that's not fair. Let me stop right there. That was incorrect, because there are people who are wearing the mask out there who think for themselves and are perfectly capable of it, but they choose to wear the mask. Let's be honest about that. Yeah, that wouldn't be fair to say it was any other way. So them aside, and they must be a rare, something of a rare breed. It's sad to see things the way they seem to be going. It's a breakdown. Am I wrong in that? Am I seeing something that other people aren't seeing? Well, it's out there right in our face. Right? It's a slow disintegration of everything that's really important. And I'm somebody who's seeking to find corners of reality where that exists. And I guess that makes the point about the visit today with Principled Anarchist to discuss some of these things. Private property, oh my God, do we keep having to have this conversation? Apparently we do. So we do. But I also have some other things there at towardanarchy.com. If you look for October 4th, the lockdown, speaking of it, it's failed to stop the spread of COVID-19. That's going to run its course naturally. It's just going to be a matter of how long it takes based on the manipulations of those who can and do. But it's been real successful in killing the economy and making people angry at each other. And one of the things that you're supposed to be angry about is racism, and that's just this week. And next week and last week. And I have an interesting story. I'll be able to tell it. Maybe not before the break, but I will definitely get into it because it's about the racism thing. I'll even put it right here on this because it's a weird thing to me. And it shouldn't be. I shouldn't be surprised by things. But the FBI has been compiling data on the infiltration of the police by white supremacists. And there's an article up there about that. And I share it only because it's just like the smallest, most I can't say most insignificant. It's just a very minuscule part of the problem when it comes to police. And it's kind of funny. I think it was Eric July, you know him or not, whatever. He just happened to mention at some point this week that these guys, they need a dragon to slay. And it was in terms of racism, that it's always conflated. It's always inflated. It's always blown up into ridiculous proportions. I also shared a couple of links that I should just share every single week, and I ought to just put permanent links up there somewhere. In fact, thinking of that, I will. They're going to go over on the side over there and just make permanent links of them. Economics in One Lesson, the only economics book that you'll ever need to read. It's online. It's free. It won't take you long to read it at all, unless you want to become an economist actively functioning in manipulating the economy and playing with numbers and telling other people. You probably want to pick up a couple more books, but this one is the primer that anybody else in the world needs to understand money, to understand just the basic reasons why people do what they do inside the economy. It's an amazing short book, and it should be on everybody's list of books to read. And then also, unless you're trying to become a lawyer and actually practice in the system, the only book you'll need to read on the law is The Law by Bastiat. Or Bastier, or however you pronounce it, depending on your level of Anarchy quotations was great this week because I just put a thing out there on the social media. I said, give me your best anarchy quotes. And one of the first ones was from Robert Lefebvre. If men are good, you don't need government. If men are evil or ambivalent, you don't dare have one, a government, that is. And as always, the link is there, and I share it with you with the understanding that it's for you to decide about the person, the individual, if you want to find out more about the interesting things that they say, that it's not an endorsement of that person every time I make a quote. And then I have this great meme. I don't know where it came from. The thing got cut off, but I'll tell you about it when we come back from the break because it's a good one. It's an important one. We'll be right back here on Toward Anarchy. I sneak in through the side door. That way Lumberg doesn't see me. What a fantastic show. What a great movie. It's running in the background Office Space. Before I went to the break, there was this meme that I wanted to share with you because it's about the cult of statism. The religion of statism is often compared to a religion, and you when you make comparisons, this is something that we're talking about in my son's schooling. Compare and contrast. When you make comparisons, you take these the texts and things, and you take and you find evidence, and you put the evidence forth and to make your claim. And so the claim is that statism is a religion, and so in both you have sacred symbols and texts. There's no question about that. Crosses and sacred documents written by people long ago. Temples and monuments, no question there. Common prayer, where people get together and sort of worship that thing itself. The statists that love to get together in arenas and wave a flag around and say prayers to it. Deities, of course, there's the gods, the presidents, the god. Don't get me wrong. I'm not picking on your religion and you and your beliefs. Never take that from what I say about any of this, because I get it that those things are personal and that they are important to you and that you have your reasons for doing it, and everyone does, and I will not fault you for that as long as you do so voluntarily like I do with everything. I'm just simply pointing out facts with this stuff. You understand, you know why you do what you do. I'm not here to question that. I'm not here to crucify you. So please climb down from the cross. No, that's terrible. Crusades, definitely a lot of crusading going on around the world, especially if you're America. So that state definitely is true. The leadership, the church leadership, the high priests, churches, your schools and your government offices, and human sacrifice. That's a lot of people die for the state. Mystic rituals like voting, yes, and elections and signing of documents with fancy pens and just the general worship of it overall. There's a lot to talk about. TowardAnarchy.com. My guest today, Principled Anarchist, coming up in just a few minutes, about 5 minutes or so. Also, coming up over the next few weeks, I'm so excited about this. I have another copy of Brushfire to give away today. We will do that a little later on. Matthew Wojtecki will join us 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I have to count my days. He'll join us, and we'll talk about Brushfire, and we'll just catch up and see what's going on in his world. Jason Bassler, Free Thought Project. He's coming up in 3 weeks, so Matthew must be about 4 weeks out. Chuck Lee, he's coming up 2 weeks. Jeez, is time going that fast? So Matthew could be 3 weeks. Chuck Lee is up next week. He'll be, you remember him from a couple weeks ago. We talked technology and hit it off real quick. He seems like my type of person, and he's doing some things on TikTok now. I just started a TikTok account. Oh boy, we have to talk about that too. I'm with the social media stuff, and it's going crazy. The changes and the standards and the way that they seem to be blocking out certain voices and certain opinions. A lot of that comes down to communications. We'll get into that. We'll cover that here coming up in a little bit with Principled Anarchist. Ram Dennison, I just talked to him this last week. We haven't set a date yet, but it will be the next few weeks, within the next month or so. Director of Money Machine. It's out finally. We'll talk to him about that. And then, of course, Bradley Thomas will be back with us as well. And as we're saying, Chuck Lee next week, though we talked about technology before, we're going to talk about off the grid and solar. So it's kind of techie as well. But we'll talk about his TikTok thing, too, and what he sees and the value of that and why I started the TikTok account. But that makes me bring up to point out at towardanarchy.com, down on the side where I will add those links that I was just talking about permanently. There's a couple of new links down there. There's ThinkSpot, there's MeWe, and there's also Minds. These are other social media places that you can find me, Toward Anarchy, on because of the potential for Facebook, the way it's changing, the way it's controlled, the way it's very PC and leftist. I'm not particularly offensive in my approach, but it doesn't really seem to matter because they seem to be going forward with the social score kind of thing, where if you get too many frowny faces on your post, that actually reflects negative on your account because you're posting things that are making people frowny face, whatever the hell that means. But that's the reality that we face. So you have to like, share, follow, subscribe, regardless of where it's at. If it's iHeartRadio, if it's TuneIn, if it's across Google Play or Stitcher or Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening to the show. If you're listening to it on the network at republicbroadcasting.org, then make sure to share it across your social media, across your Twitter, wherever you can. Share it in emails with everybody however you you be in contact with people, please do. Principal Anarchist is coming up next, right here on Toward Anarchy.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
TowardAnarchy.com. That's the place to go, as always, to follow along with. That's it's mine. It's my little safe space. There's not a lot of safe spaces in the world. I bet you do love it. Producer Ken was just telling me during the break about the fact that he picked up a new toy for his toy. No, I don't like to say that. I actually don't like to use the word toy in reference to a firearm. Wonderful. Yeah, it's one of those things where I carry mine in my pocket, and so I don't know. It'd be nice to have the light on it and the sight, but I don't think I want any more bulk, any more weight. I'm happy. I don't know. It would be nice, and I think there's actually a rail on my latest firearm. It actually comes with a rail built into it, so it'd be really easy to put one on there. I haven't actually looked at what's available for it yet. It's a very new gun. I have a Security 9 from Ruger, and I don't know, maybe been around for a year. And see, right there, you said it yourself. It's a little heavy, and that 9's already a heavy gun for me. I've for the last, I don't know, more than a decade, maybe 12 years, up until I bought this one about a year ago. I carried a 380, very small, very lightweight, just dead on. I mean, bing, 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 bing. You put a nice tight little circle in somebody's chest if you had to. TowardAnarchy.com, October 4th is the day you're looking for. Principled Anarchist joins us right now. How you doing, Principled Anarchist? What's this? There's nobody there. Yeah, I'm trying to make a point. I don't know if it's as good a point as you might like. But I think for me, it says everything it needs to say. It's so hard to find somebody who's as principled as they claim that they are these days, and I am very glad that I'm not a follower. That I don't go around trying to define my reality by the terms of somebody else's existence, for whatever reason, whether it's football teams or religious leaders or the state or whatever, philosophers, movie stars, rock stars. I just don't do it. And so I saw somebody saying at one point this week about being disappointed by the Libertarian Party, and this is new. The Libertarian Party, love it as much. Let me explain. Being disappointed with the Libertarian Party. Okay, the name of the show is Toward Anarchy, and Toward Anarchy is a phrase that was actually created. Who knows when, but where? But in relation to the Libertarian Party, it was actually created by David Nolan. It was his attempt to suggest that that's what the Libertarian Party should be, as a way to get away from authoritarian control, state control, moving toward anarchy. And it's in reference to the political chart. You've seen it. It's the XY axis. There's authoritarianism traditionally in the bottom left-hand corner, maximum authoritarianism, and in the upper right-hand corner would have been anarchy, maximum freedom. That's flipped now. It's upside down these days. But originally, when they came up with it, that's where liberty was anarchy, was in that corner. And the Anarchy A symbol that is I don't use it on the website, so you may not get to see it if you've only ever just been on the website. If you've been on my social media, you see it all over the place. But on the website, I have the big banner of my own creation, which is the words "toward anarchy," and there's an arrow over the word "toward," pointing at the word anarchy, and the circle A from the first A in anarchy, and it's my own creation, and so I went with that. But then there's David's creation that I use all the time, and that's the Anarchy A with the arrow pointing through to the upper right hand quadrant. And so that's the Libertarian Party to me, and I've known about this for 30 years, and but before that. And let's put that in relation. The party's only been around for 49. Okay, so I know that. I've known that a long time, and I've always been an anarchist. And so, seeing that inside the libertarian foundings was really cool for me. That was a neat thing, and it stuck with me. It was like boom, hit me. And I always look for the right place to express it, and for years and years after reading almost 30 years reading that, just looking for a place to find this, to put this, to use it as it were. So I understand, to me, the Libertarian Party was supposed to be the Anarchist Party. It was supposed to be that attempt, but it's just statism. It's a little the iffy questions about ruling people, but I don't want to even get into all of that, just because the problem is with that middle of the road party, that milquetoast party, that's what you get to people that wander to it. You get the disenfranchised and the disinterested. And if they're disenfranchised and disinterested and they dissent with people that they might otherwise not find objectionable, how are you supposed to get them all together in one place and get them to agree on things? So it's even worse than the other two parties. At least those other two parties are broken up into those people that kind of agree with each other and kind of on this side and kind of agree with each other on that side, and they maintain their power that way. So the odds are already stacked against the Libertarian Party, and then you get the wishy-washiness of it, and then you get the fact that the current chosen candidate for the party is ineffective, and the people that they've used to try to push her, Jo Jorgensen is her name, tried to push her into the political fray, have failed to do so with any skills at all. I've run up against. I've avoided saying anything about this because I don't ever want to be this person that's pointing out the failures of other people, or worse, actually sort of dogging them about it. And so it's hard for me to point fingers and say names, even when they need to be pointed at and names need to be said and people need to be held accountable. It's not my place, and I don't even want to say that I don't care, because I tire of saying that too. It's not right. It's just that it's beyond me. It's more than I wish to invest my time and energy in. And I tried to get Joe and Spike, that's the vice presidential candidate, Spike Cohen, it's a nickname, I don't know what his real name is, to be on the show, and I ran up against their campaign manager, and the guy's a complete flake. He's completely useless. He's a tool and incapable of making good decisions from my own experience with him, which, mind you, is entirely limited to me and my experience with him and that one aspect of his abilities. However, it was a big thing in my understanding. It was a breach of etiquette, along with just a failure to be a man and do a job that you are tasked to do, and to do it well. And so it makes you wonder if it just turns out that he's just that way and he's just bad, or if it's just indicative of the entire Libertarian Party and their approach to choosing people to represent them, because they seem to choose very badly. I had some better examples of people that you could have chosen from to try to represent your interests in government, however futile that might be. They were here on the show having the conversations, and I don't think that I'm the reason that they didn't get chosen to represent the party. So I don't think there's anything there that should keep somebody else, especially somebody who's running around saying let her speak, from having a platform that admittedly isn't reaching millions, but you got a few minutes to drop in and say a few words to a few thousand, several thousand, thousands. And that's just a week. What about over a month? What about over the period of time between now and the election that the information is out there and that I share it and that I brag about the fact that I talked with a potential presidential candidate? All of the things that come with bringing that voice out. To me, it's a failure of those people around her to do what's right, and you just wonder why it is, why they're so ineffective, and then you just look at it and you say, well, that's why, because it's wishy-washy, it's in the middle, and so for me it doesn't work. And the reality is that voting isn't democracy in and of itself is no valid transfer of authority. Authority is a myth. This modern idea of a state, it's entirely totalitarian in nature. It's a slave plantation. There's no legitimacy in these self-appointed individuals that run it, that make the rules for it. And when I talk about the state, I don't ever mean to speak of the state in terms of it being a bad idea in itself, okay? Let me explain that. And it's hard to explain to these unprincipled individuals out there. The state, by definition, is just the body politic, or a society of men that have come together for the purpose of promoting their mutual safety and the advantage that it brings them to bring their efforts together. It's like creating a business. It's like creating any organization. You do it because it's a good idea, because you're stronger as a collective, as weird as it would be for me to say something like that. But let me finish the thought before you start shooting arrows at me. It's true, two heads are better than one. Maybe not when it comes to hierarchical structures and leading things. One head is better than two in that case. He better have some heads underneath him to help him clarify all of the other stuff. And that's what you do about surrounding yourself by smart people. But in the greater sense of things, we're all better if we all work together to try to make things better, just to make things in general. So when we do that voluntarily, there's nothing wrong with that. So there's nothing inherently wrong with the state. I mean, the definition I just gave you for the state is Black's Law. It's not a quote, but it's real close. And so there's nothing inherently wrong with the state. So when I speak of the state in that sense, I'm either talking about a voluntary collective of people who are there because they can be and because they want to be, not because they were born there and it's been dictated to them by the people who were already there that they have to follow the rules and that they don't have any choice and that they can't cross borders without permission. And they just the list of things that you can and can't do because of the fact that you were born in some spot that happens to be run by people who don't care about your opinion. They don't care about you at all, not in any way. But so the point is that you can't it's not that voting democracy, you can't, there's no valid transfer of authority there. With authority already being a myth, I can't, legitimate or not, I can't magically empower someone else to do something that I couldn't or wouldn't, as a principled individual, do myself. The idea that the state, a non-voluntary one, can come together and create laws and force people to do things that they can't opt out of is antithetical to every notion of the individual, and it should be even to every person who claims to love freedom. And that's why it blows my mind when I have to have a conversation with somebody constantly, somebody who calls himself a libertarian or somebody who calls himself an anarchist, who doesn't respect the simple notion of what is not yours is somebody else's. It belongs to somebody else, period. It's their private property. And even if it's state property, this is this conversation that's weird, because I know there shouldn't be any public property, no collective property. I get that, but that's a different conversation. There is collective property. There is public property. It exists. And here's the reality. I have no valid right to destroy that property. Oh, well, yeah, well, all of our taxes paid for it and everything. No, that's not right. Even if you accept that our taxes all paid for it and that we all have our entitlement to some percentage of, I would only have just that little bit of a percentage of entitlement to destroy that. So the argument that it's destroying things in general to try to bring about change is a hard one for me to grasp. And that's a big conversation right now because of the fact that you have BLM out there on the streets. You have them using Antifa tactics. You have people calling themselves Antifa and creating a group out of this previous idea, as it were, and out there on the streets. But when you get down to it, they have the same collective thinking, the same collectivist thinking. And I'm not talking about the voluntarist type. It's this, again, about this property and this idea that somehow if people incorporate, if they start a business, that somehow that changes their ability to own property, or that their property becomes public, or that people, us out here, we somehow have some right to it. And we're going to slip into a break, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to spell this out once and for all right here on Toward Anarchy. That's a really good idea. I don't know how anything is doing in the lockdown. Everything has been weird and different for all industries across the board, and things are changing, and the slow burn continues. Before I went into the break, just this conversation of the property rights, I have to, how does a business, let me explain what a business is. And what happens is this all comes about because of talking with friends, with people who claim a certain ideology, who should be consistent. And so this is about people being principled and keeping for other people the same ideas and values that they do for themselves, and respecting those things in other people and their things. A business and a corporation, yes, it's a government entity and all that nonsense, but it's not a thing that wouldn't exist outside of government. In the stateless society and the anarchist society, people will still come together and they will pool their resources to become one entity to create a product or a service. That's what incorporation is. It's a number of people coming together, creating a contract that spells out their responsibilities. It spells out the organization of the company, and the point is that it brings multiple people into one entity to pool their resources to do a job, to provide a good or a service to somebody, and it creates a contract with them to protect each other, not just to spell out the basics of the corporation and how it's laid out and who's responsible for what and the penalties for not meeting certain goals or meeting their responsibilities under the contract. It also creates a legal basis, and yes, there would still be laws. There would still be things that people would have to deal with in a stateless society in regard to other people and their property. These are where laws are a real thing, where you're protecting other people and their property. And they can be enforced in a number of ways. They can be, and it still be a voluntary system. Trust me on this. We've talked about it before. But I want to stick specifically to the point of the contract being that it's bringing these multiple people together and holding them responsible. And it also provides protection from them in the system from each other and from all of the people. They're just trying to bring a product or a service to the market. Let's not assume any ill intent here. Let's just assume that, like most of us, we want to create the thing that we enjoy or the thing that we see is important, and we want to share it with other people, and that there's no other intent but to do that and hopefully be successful at it, okay? And so you come together with other people to help you with the resources, with the capital that you need to be able to do this. And you create a contract and you call it a business and you call it a corporation, and it becomes a separate entity that is responsible for itself. And yet all the people in it are responsible for their actions too. Okay, this is what incorporation is about. Again, it's not inherently evil. It has nothing to do with the state in any other sense than the state has co-opted it like it does everything else. And that's the last word for now on property rights. We'll be back. We'll hit the top of the hour here, and we'll do the rest of this Toward Anarchy thing.
This is RBN, the Republic Broadcasting Network.
We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
Okay, we are off into hour number 2 here on Toward Anarchy, and we're having a conversation with Principled Anarchist, and if you hadn't figured it out yet, I'm talking to myself. And this is the problem, is that I keep running into people who claim to have an ideology, who they're not consistent. And I get that there are some things that are personal, that they come down to your personal feelings about the way these things should be, and that's because they probably don't have any reflection on reality. Your personal feelings about those things, if they were that way, that'd be great, but it really doesn't affect reality. It's like your personal feelings about the economy and about how money works and about what capitalism should be doesn't really matter. The economy doesn't care about your opinion. So you can either learn about what an economy is, or you can suffer at the hands of the people who know what one is and take to their advantage. TowardAnarchy.com. Go to October 4th, and in relation to that, I've shared with you the starter tools that you need to find liberty and freedom and become a principled individual, a principled anarchist, a principled man, woman, purple penguin, whatever you claim to be. Economics in One Lesson, the amazing short book by Henry Hazlitt. The only economics book that you'll really ever need unless you're trying to become an economist and you want to play around in that field. That's the reality of it. And then Bastier's The Law. Those two books right there are what framed my entire existence. So many things do, so many ideas, and we don't even realize how they can affect us. I mean, even as religious influence. I was raised in a Judeo-Christian home. There was religious influence on my life all of my life until I got out on my own and decided that I didn't need that for myself to continue. That it's there. It's still an influence, and it was a generally a positive influence. It should be, like anything, any input that you get, that you take the value out of it and not downplay the negative in it, but don't make it a part of, put it in its place, accept it for what it is, and move on and take what you get out of it. It's the same thing I ask about entertainment. It's just an approach on life, and accepting that things can't be so black and white, even when they are, even when, you get it. You see the world in terms of black and white, but the reality is the world is gray because it's seen by everybody else who's in it. You understand what I'm saying? You can see it in perfect black and white, perfect clarity, every single thing in front of you, every idea, every notion that's ever come across you, you can go, this is where I stand on it. I believe I can do that, placed in that position. Ask me that question of morality or potential authority or policy or politic, whatever it is. I think I can do that. And I think most people probably think they can, but the reality is that the rest of the world, because of that fact, is gray. And so you have to accept it, and you have to let other people be and say and do who they are. And you can do that and that be the end of it, or you can fret about it. And this is something that happened to me this week, a realization that I came to that I thought it would be important to share, because you've been party to some of it, some of the experience as a listener to the show. You've been able to hear some of the conversations that I've had with some of the people that fall into this category of people that I forget that the reason that they came together, that the reason that they did so many great things, the core reason was because of conspiracy, and not because that these people were, whatever you want to call them, freedom fighters, individuals who were necessarily pushing for liberty, freedom from the state, right? Freedom of obligation to the state. That's my definition for liberty, in case you're not clear. And so they're not freedom fighters in that sense, and they were conspiracy theorists, and that's what brought them together. And they did amazing and great things. But as time has gone on, and the separation from those individuals that I knew at that time has grown, I've experienced the failure, the letdown of them. And I started to say something about this probably just about an hour ago in relation to the libertarians, and something that I had seen earlier. And it was just that they're always disappointing them. And my response is that I'm disappointed by libertarians regularly, little L libertarians regularly. I'm disappointed by capital L libertarians every single day of my life. Somebody who comes out and says that they're capital L libertarian, but then holds what I would term to be pretty opposite views on some things like property, things like money, stuff like these are core to libertarian values. That you can't even call yourself a libertarian if you don't understand capitalism, you don't understand money. At least enough of economics in the sort of one lesson Henry Hazlitt. And you cannot call yourself libertarian if you don't understand those things, because those are the ideas that built the Libertarian Party, the capital L's, the idea that every man was free to do what he wanted with his personal economy is key, because it's key to freedom. If you can't decide what to do with your wealth and your capital, and you're not the first person who decides it, then you are a slave. If any man can come along and take from your wealth without your permission any arbitrary number that he decides, I don't care if it's 1 cent or 1/10 of 1 cent, or if it's 99% of it. If they take it all or they take some of it, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing. If they take it without your absolute strict consent, and not just because you were born on a piece of property that somebody thinks they own, then you are a slave. You are not free. You're not free to decide for yourself the things that are best for you in a world that's based on economic success and capitalism. Even in the places where they pretend it's about socialism and that you can be a collectivist and that you can get along with a state being at the center of that control, and even they still practice enough of the mixed economy that they're not completely, totally, at least not the people living up high on the horse. They're certainly practicing capitalism at the top of all socialism, of all communism, because they have plenty of money and they get to decide what they want to do with it. They have all your money and they get to decide what to do with it. That's what capitalism is. Having your money and getting to decide what to do with it, being the head decision maker of your own personal economy. It's in the word capitalism, kaput, head. It's right there. It's the practice of being the head of your own economy. I don't even know how to say it anymore, and it's just another one of these places that there's a lack of principle. It just doesn't exist. It's like, I get to be the head of my economy, but for some reason, some magical reason, businessmen don't. Now, I get it that they've taken some of their money in some of these places and they've used it to buy favor within politics, but that's not a problem with capitalism. That's actually a benefit of capitalism if you want to look at it. It's exactly what capitalism is supposed to be able to allow you to do, to make those big decisions and to be able to buy the things that you need. Well, they have enough capital to exercise their capitalism into socialism by forcing you to be subjected to the whims of the state, by either just buying it to fight off their competition in the marketplace, or whether they actually are politically motivated and are behind ideas to push an agenda, whether it's a free speech agenda or Second Amendment. I don't know. These are the only things that should be important. There was an idea that those rights that those people have, not just the citizens, were important and existed to every individual for a reason, because they want to create a society. You want people to not be starving. You don't want to see tents popping up mile after mile under every bridge, under every overpass, every street in LA. It sounds like except where the rich people live, where they have spikes on the inside areas of the concrete, so that you can't lie there and get or on the park benches, so you can't lie across them. You can only sit. The places where they made it so that you can't stay there are the only places that people aren't just popping up and staying. You don't want to see people struggle, but then you take it too far and you say that people must have it must be decided for them. And it's when you make that next illogical leap I don't know where. It's hard for me to even talk about it because I don't know where people make that leap. I never remember. I've said this before that as children, I don't know where it goes away, but as children, we're taught to keep our hands to ourselves and keep our hands off of other people's stuff, and that everything that isn't ours is somebody else's, and therefore we have no right to it. Where the hell is it that we go from understanding that is as the smallest of children to it being a joke, just something that you tell children, but that you don't ever end up actually practicing because you go and vote and have other people take things from other people that don't belong to them, that they're not willing to give up, and give it to somebody else. It doesn't matter what the reason is for. But what I want to know is why. Where does that end? Where does any of that question of child innocence, of understanding of the world suddenly end? The wake up, it's time to wake up, you need to make money. That's the line in the song. They're dreaming of outer space and building a rocket ship and flying far away, and now they're laughing at her face saying, wake up, you need to make money. Where does that, just because you have to wake up and make money doesn't mean that you have to throw all those values out the window. That's the confusion of what capitalism is for the individual versus what everything is that's been poisoned by statist ideologies, by collectivist thinking. Everything is collectivist thought. Racism is collectivist thought. Taxism is collectivist thought. Telling Walmart that it doesn't have the right to its own private property, regardless of what you think of their political opinions or the way that they use the tool money to buy favor and influence in places. It doesn't have a right to their property. These things are just silly notions, because if somebody tried to tell you that you can't spend your money or that you can't protect your property on your terms, you would say that they were full of it. So where is the consistency? Where is the principle? Where are these people that take the values that they hold for themselves and extend them to everybody else on the planet? Not just white people, not just people in Colorado, not just people in Texas, not just people in America, but brown people and black people and yellow people and people that don't know what they are. Just people, not citizens, not constructs, not robots. If I'm not going to be able to spit out the word, I'll just change it. Not these entities, I guess you could call them robots, that exist on the internet and the social media. These are real people behind there, and this is the lesson of today, I guess, because this is what's happening to me as I want to not have a fixed mindset, and I want to have a growth mindset. I want to commit to change that changes me for the better and reflects to others. I'm different here in this forum than I am anywhere else in reality. And that's not to say that I'm putting on a show here in that negative connotative sense. I am putting on a show here in the sense of that I know people are listening and watching, a lot of them. It's kind of scary. But I'm performing to a certain level to meet the ends of positive communication and being and putting forth the best message and the clearest message, and it being as clean and concise as possible. That's what the show is here. And one thing that I don't do here is or that I do here that I don't do in other places is I edit my language, and that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's a positive thing, because that language is important when you're speaking to other people and you want them to understand. And I talk about all these different ways. I'm going to have to write a book about this, I guess. Gives me a headache just thinking about trying to write a book. You have to communicate positively with people if you want them to get the message. And I don't do that in other places. So it's an exercise for me to make myself do it. And I'm good at it when I want to be, but I'm really, really bad at it. And this is true of you too. And that's why I bring the point up. So I'm really, really bad at it at times. I'm really good at it, and I'm really bad at it. And the places that I'm bad at it, I want to change that. And this week was one of those revelatory weeks for me where I realize where I fail in my ability to communicate in certain ways, and then I just want to change it once and all. It's not like I didn't know already. It's just that I felt it was okay. It's kind of like alcoholics and not being able to have just that one drink, Oh, it'll be okay. Just have the one drink and you put it down. Well, some people can't do that. And it's the same way. The same dopamine receptors happen when you get a like or you get a share. The same reaction in your body occurs on the social media as does when you do drugs or when you get some other thing that makes you happy, that brings satisfaction to your body and your brain. It's the same chemical release throughout the body. And so you can get hooked on it just as easily. And so you have to take the same steps to be good at what you do if you want to make that message clear to people and you want to communicate. And you can't pick up the bottle again. You can't say, all right, it'll be okay to just tell this one guy to go himself. You see how I edited myself? And nobody had to edit that. I did it myself. That's the only editing I do. We'll come back and we'll keep talking about this. And there's so much more. We're having a conversation with Principled Anarchist right here on Toward Anarchy. You should just be glad that I have this magical little button on the front of the microphone that I don't turn on until I'm actually really ready to start saying things, because you would see me hear. Well, no, see me, that wouldn't be bad. It's the probably the hearing me. that could have been painful, trying to hear me singing to that song. I'm having this conversation with Principled Anarchist, and it's funny because I intended to do this anyway, where I didn't have a guest this week because the last couple of weeks you heard me mention how I felt was rushed, and I didn't know if it was just trying to get something out or if I was just feeling like I just always had to make sure that there was somebody here to have a conversation with, and that conversation had to be like spot on, number one, just perfect, and it has to be just a perfect guest every time. And I think they all are perfect in their own way, and I know people are listening, and I think that's what it is. And so just the realization here that just so many people are listening in so many different places all over the world, and it's just an interesting little thing to have to deal with inside your brain. In relation to trying to just do it every week, and then having the courage, if you will, to turn on the microphone and just say and speak your mind, and know that somebody out there is considering it, whether they like it or not. They're listening, and they're forming opinions, and maybe their worldview is changing, and it's all fun. super, super fun, but that just makes it that much more important. And so I had already planned to have just nobody here this week and just talk and get some of the things out. And as I always do, I jot some notes down in my little notebook, just that has it's the date and my guest's name and what they do, just so I don't forget, and that I don't have to go looking for it in other places. And it's just always right there for me to remember to say, and just dive in and talk and get some of the things off of my mind, and feel like I'm here still doing the other thing, that the idea of helping with the communication and doing my job, my work, that my business, my product, my service that I'm offering to people. There you go. That's what it is. Even though I'm giving it away, it's still there. Go to towardanarchy.com, and one of these days we'll figure out how to do all that stuff. But until then, I have all the great guests. I have Chuck Lee coming up next week. We're doing off-grid solar conversation. We'll talk about his experiences with that and setting it up and all the tech that goes into that and how it's benefited him. We will be talking to Jason Bassler of Free Thought Project coming up over the next few weeks. Ram Dennison has agreed to come back on the show and talk about Money Machine. Of course, Bradley Thomas will be here to talk about some of the things he's written about. We'll talk about police. We'll talk about that article that I've shared already a couple of times with all that information in it about the fact that 80% of the encounters with police are encounters that are basically revenue generation. There's no victim. There's no violation of an individual or their property. It's just an opportunity for the state to exercise its authority over people and to rob them for whatever excuse, one way or another. And so we'll be talking about that. And of course, Matthew Wojtecki, the author of Brushfire, a thriller, will be on the show to talk about his book. And I have a book to give away. And this is what I'm doing. I have a couple to give away this week that I'm going to give away only electronically. You have to send an email, because this is what I experienced with this. I've done this a couple of times where I've given something away with the email. Is that because people listen to the show later, if they're not listening to it live, they listen to the show later, they just assume that it's already gone. Don't assume that stuff is already gone, because everybody's thinking the same thing. They're thinking, the show was Sunday, it's Monday, I'm listening to it. X people have already listened to it. They've already sent their email in. Don't assume, because then it takes 3 days for somebody to send an email, which should have just come like that. Because that's what I know. I do it too. I just don't. When I hear somebody, but send me the emails, and I have multiple copies to give away. So some people are going to win some copies. It's towardanarchy@outlook.com. I'm not going to add your email address to any list or anything. I won't send you anything. And when you give me your information to mail it to you, I will not keep your information. It doesn't go in a database. It's just on a sticky note until I put it on the label to send the book out to you, and then it's thrown away. I'm not going to bother you to keep your information. Thank you, Kelly. I sent that book out this week, our winner from last week on the show, and the person who sent it an email. God, why didn't I write down their name? That was just terrible. And it's so good at some things and so bad at some others. That's where the practice comes in. We got another half hour to go here on Toward Anarchy. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
TowardAnarchy.com. If you want to follow along, you're looking for October 4th, and you can see everything that I've been talking about today, the links that I've shared. It is towardanarchy@outlook.com. That's the email address. And I wanted to stress, because I don't know that I did, that I choose randomly from the email. So it's not just the first person to send an email. And that's why I'm saying, don't, just because you're listening to the show on Monday or Tuesday, don't think that you don't have a shot to grab one of these copies of Brushfire, the book by Matthew Wojtecki. And we'll have some more to give away over the next couple of weeks. And then Matthew will join us and tell us about the book. And one person that I didn't even have time, because it just happened. They reached out to me through their people, as some people often do, especially when they have a big name, when they have people to do things for them, when they have big worlds that they live in. And so it was kind of, it was interesting. It was a pleasure, really, to get an email from Kimberly and Foster Gamble's camp about them coming on the show and talking about Thrive 2 that just came out, 5, 6, 7 days ago, something like that. Now, I guess maybe a little bit longer than that. We're a few more days than that into October. So maybe it's been about 2 weeks. But at any rate, Thrive 2, if you remember Thrive, if you ever saw the documentary Thrive, it was a good one, and to talk about, let's talk about conspiracy a little bit with our principal anarchist. This is the light side of the New World Order. That's the argument. It's a battle of good versus evil, if you will, light and dark, and that Foster Gamble represents some of the light side. That's some argument that people have made in places. But 100 million people have seen Thrive, and it's in a bunch of different languages all over the world. And it's one of the documentaries that it talks about how bad things are, but it talks about how good things may be. And I have to watch it again. Unfortunately, I don't want to just give you the blanket impression that I think this is the most amazing piece of work that's ever been done. It's been years since I saw it. And so I don't remember exactly every single little bit of it. And I know that there have been other documentaries that have come along that have talked about conspiracy and tied some things together. But then in the end, they talk about sort of scientific, they border on scientific dictatorship kind of control of things. I think that's what happened with Zeitgeist. By the end of it, as much good information as there may have been, some of it apocryphal, some of it just wrong, but there was a lot of other good information in there. But then by the time you get to it, to the end of it, the people who created it are sort of pushing this weird scientific dictated utopian future, all very questionable. It places the rest of everything that they talk about in question. It's like all these people that come along and talk about how important it is to be free and what liberty means to them, and then they say capitalism is bad, or they say money is evil, and I'm just like, you have a fundamental misunderstanding of core things at the heart of liberty, at the heart of freedom, at the very notion of you being able to control your own existence through managing your own wealth. And so I will go see Thrive again. I don't specifically remember anything. I see producer Ken agrees with me that it was a good documentary, and it was bright. And so much of the other stuff is doom and gloom. It's just telling you how bad it is, and it's focusing on all of these negative things and these negative people with the intent of exposing them and telling the truth about the things that these people do to manipulate the world around us. That it would be that this was something different from those. And then so they have a new one out, and that's the point. It just came out, Thrive 2, and they want to talk about it. And I guess this is more solutions driven, maybe. And I guess this is where we'll see the rubber meets the pavement, right? What their solutions are to things. That'll make the difference, because everybody seems to have they have their direction, their solution. If you ask the right person on the street that's protesting, and BLM support or whatever that's out there, or the Blue Line people on either side, you ask them what they want, and they all want the same thing. They just want varying degrees of status control. These aren't people pushing any new paradigm in the way things are done at all, by any means. They just want a kinder, gentler boot, and they'd appreciate it if you'd stomp on a few more white people. That's not fair, but it's true of just as many of them as need be to make it true, and that only one of them is all it would take. I'm excited. I think it'll be really great to have Foster and or Kimberly. We'll see exactly how it just happened last night. I just responded last night to them, and they reached out to me, which was awesome. I don't even know. They probably, if they're smart, they listen to Republic Broadcasting, and they just went and grabbed email addresses from everybody up, and hopefully they're going to try to be guests on every show across the network. Can you imagine the variety of people that could be reached, the number of people that would hear all of the what we would hope would be a great positive message. If you base it on the first one, I just don't seem to recall anything particularly negative about the original one. I'll have to watch it again, and I'll let you know, of course, once I hear back from them what exactly they want to do. But this is what I'm talking about, this idea of sharing and making, if all of the people across Republic Broadcasting, the people that are listening, they're probably most of the people that are listening live with me right now, as opposed to people who are listening later on necessarily. All of those voices all around the world hearing the different messages, and it's all because of the how does somebody get an email address, or how does somebody get a web address these days, or a link to a social media page. It's all because of the like and the share, and you have to share it to your friends, and it's just extremely important, and it's going to become more and more important as people continue to naturally self-compartmentalize. It's a natural thing as the population increases, as ideas increase. Right along with it, people seek refuge in and around people who think like they are, and so that's happening. But then you have the problem that we always have, but it continues to get worse as the state continues to try and manipulate and push things through, either through its proxies like Google and the CIA and things like that, or shadow governments and the manipulations of those particular level of gatekeepers. But and who all's tied? I mean, we just don't know. You just don't know. So the idea is that people are taking and running off to the different places like Minds and MeWe. I'm not bailing on Facebook or Twitter or any of the traditional social media, but over the last couple of weeks, as they've began this rollout, and this is specific to Facebook, but they all seem to follow along when it's the mainstream. And we can talk about why that is, and we can talk about conspiracy, but the fact is that it's happening over the last couple of weeks. There's been and initially it just killed everybody. We'll talk about this with Jason Bassler when he drops in from Free Thought Project, because those guys have been kicked right square in the jewels. They probably 6 million person reach up until the big purge in 2018, which is the last time that something like this happened with Facebook, where they cranked a different algorithm and set different standards for the way people behave and how it reflects on the pages and the information that people share. They got nuked. They're like Jones in that sense, Alex Jones, and some of the other right-wing voices. Excuse me. Some of the other right-wing voices that were culled during that time. Free Thought Project was victims of it, and while they've been able to recover somewhat, it hit them hard. And the last time that happened, it killed off millions of people that they were reaching, probably 6 million people that they were reaching. It wouldn't surprise me. And we'll talk to Jason. We'll see. He'll tell us exactly, because it's a big deal. But it's happening again now. They're cracking down on. And I don't know how intentional it is. I don't even want to suggest that. I don't think it matters. Again, it comes down to the meta event. I talked about this before. These things that are meta events, they happen. There's nothing that you can do about them. They're a reality, and you have to respond to them. And you have to respond to them in the most positive and powerful ways. If you want to be noticed, you want to succeed, you want to, even though they had that right-wing culling a couple of years back. People have been able to recover from it, and voices are still there. Republic Broadcasting, still there, still reaching tens of thousands of people every week. I don't snoop around the numbers. I have access to the social media, but I don't snoop around the numbers because I'm amazed enough by my own. But if you look at mine over the last couple of weeks, when it comes specifically to just Facebook, and I reach 3,000 or so people a week on Facebook, or at least I have been. And then, tiny people. How many did you reach last week? The naysayers, they're always there. They're even if they're just in the back of my mind, they're always there. The reach has gone down over the past couple of weeks, and it was halved, or maybe even greater than that. And I was watching it, but there's so many numbers, and just watching it. I've watched it recover. But that's through just, again, doing the work and trying to push things back out there. So about half of that halving is gone now, or is back. I don't know how you look at it. Either way, the numbers are starting to go back up a little bit again, but it's only just begun as far as this goes. And it's obvious that it's not a thing. It's not something to do with me. It's not something to do with something that I've failed to do across the social media. It's the tools that they put out there, because one of the things that's happened is if you have a Facebook page, you probably have noticed this. One of the options, it's recently popped up, it wasn't there to begin with, is to roll your page back to be able to manage it, to roll it back to the interface that they had before this latest change began, because obviously people are finding it hard to do the things. I've talked about it just a little bit. I've been able to only literally reach half of the number of people that I had been able to reach before. I can shout out to 100 people like Eagle Eye, who shares every day, every week. Amazing. Thank you. I can shout out to 100 people, and that will reach 3,000 people just like that. But that was cut in half over the last couple of weeks. It's coming back slowly, just a person at a time. But that's the impact that they have when they start tweaking with these things. And so you have to do it. You have to share. You have to click the likes. Don't assume that everybody else is going to do it. Don't assume that because you saw it shared across somebody's page that it's going to reach all the people that it should. You have to make sure. Share the network. Share the show. Share good ideas. Start your own thing. This with TikTok. I created a TikTok account this week. I haven't done anything with it yet. But I created multiple accounts this week. I created Minds and MeWe accounts this week too. And the point is to just reach people. And the interesting thing about TikTok, I didn't realize this, is that it's random, because it's not just about the people that you follow, but that you get random stuff thrown at you all the time. So an interesting number of people could definitely see something that you've done or something that you said in that short form if you make it powerful. And I've had an idea in my mind for a while now to do a short form thing, just 2 minutes. I actually even have a social media page for it already that exists, but I've never used it. And it's just called 2 Minutes of Truth. And it would just be straight up 2 minutes of, I guess when it comes down to it, it's just truth as I see it, but it's the truth as it is. And it's just in this short form to be able to present it to some people. And because the attention span is so short, it's just a scroll. You only have a second to catch them. And so you have to have some impact. You only have a little bit of their time. If you could get, it's your special. You're coming and listening to long form. You're listening to the whole conversation. not everybody else is going to do that. So you have to sort of bombard them with the likes and the shares and the fact that you are listening to and seeing and wanting other people to see and share in these ideas with you as well. You have to be overt about it to even make any of an impact. That's what I found out across the social media over in the last year. It's across the internet anymore in the last year, is that it takes active work to reach people and to reach people with if you're going to put in the work, you want to reach people with that best message. And so, again, it all just ties together, as everything does in my weird little mind, that I get to come here and do this thing and talk and have some fun and just try to share some good ideas. I thought about talking about the ridiculous debate that happened on Tuesday, but all I could do was draw a little clown face next to that sentence, and that just said it all. We'll be right back on Toward Anarchy. Okay, so let's end the show on a happy note, a topic of great concern: racism. It's because I mentioned it earlier in the show, because a weird thing happened to me this week, and it shouldn't have happened. And it's indicative of the culture that we live in. And it explains people to me, certain types of people to me. It clarifies them for me. It makes them transparent to me. They're soft people with racist tendencies, even if they don't know it. But they tend to be braggarts and people who boast about being powerful and strong, yet their mind is so weak that they don't understand different views of things, especially if they're tinted with a particular color. And again, this is part of the thing that I've mentioned before about separating your art and the things that you love and understand from the people who create them, the flawed individuals who create them. And so there's this comic book that Warner Brothers has opted for a movie that I'm really excited about for a number of reasons. One, it was a great premise. It was a new, fresh world that didn't exist anywhere else. And I bought all the issues of it, and they were pretty rare. And I even have like the variant cover with the naughty word on it. And I actually, at the time I was reading the book, I think I may either that or maybe no, because it couldn't have been, because it was 3 or 4 years ago that the series came out. So no, couldn't have been anything like that. But at any rate, I have it. I invested in it because I read a synopsis of it right away when I saw the first book hit the shelves, and I read it and I thought, okay, well, that's neat. It's new, and I've talked about this before, absolutely, on the show, and that's the idea that Marvel and DC have watered down their characters and their history by completely replacing them with females, with gay characters, with transgender characters, with black characters. But they're the same character, they're just played by different people. And so it's this weird pandering to niche audiences that they've done that has watered down their characters. And my argument has been that there's nothing wrong with those characters or anything one way or the other necessarily. But the problem is that what's really needed is that these people need these different people of color, of different minds, need their own worlds and their own places. They don't need to be pandered to with existing white characters. That may make some people happy, just turning the white character into, just replacing him with something more quote unquote diverse. But the reality is they needed their own worlds. And I was attacked for expressing so much as that's in an open forum about comic books. And it just blew my mind. It just blew my mind. But the punchline, just before we get out of here, was that it's a world where only black people have superpowers. Yeah, so, of course, that means it's racist, but it wasn't all about that. Hey, we'll be back next week with Chuck Lee. We'll talk about off-the-grid living solar right here on Toward Anarchy. Thank you. Take care.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.